What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Scott and Ian Show on the SBL podcast. Today, something a little different, a treat. Mr. Billy Sheehan, the interview that I did with the legendary Billy Sheehan from Bass 2022. I got to sit down with Billy, and he went through everything, his sounds, his techniques, talking about the early days of Talas, Mr. Big, what he's doing now with the Winery Dogs. So much just graciousness. That's the word. I mean, he's just an amazing, gracious guy. There's no ego, even though he is one of the most ferocious rock bass players of all time. And he's just awesome to sit down with us. He has an engineer who's helping him go through the stuff, right? So he's showing us basses and we're listening to sounds, and he's got a button for the distortion. And it's so fun. I loved doing this. I'm a big fan. I had one of his basses when I grew up. Like, it was my first real bass. I had a Billy Sheehan Attitude. So doing this interview was mind-blowing for me. So cool. So you're in for a real treat. And let me tell you, before we get there, what's going on at SBL this week. We've got a mentor session coming up Monday, July 17th with Todd Johnson, going through intros and outros of jazz standards. Because if you've played a jazz brunch before, or if you've done that dinner set, you know that just looking at the chord changes, well, that's just like level 1. Level 2 is like, what happens? Is there an intro to this tune? How are we getting out? How are we getting in? How are we getting out? So check out this seminar with Todd Johnson in our mentors program. It'll sort you out. If you can't watch in real time, we archive it. You kidding me? You didn't think we... No, of course, we archive all of this stuff. You can type in a search, you can look for anything, and it'll pull up all these mentors streams for you. So be sure to check that out, or check out the archive if you miss it in real time. Also, we've got Bass 2023 coming up. Oh, it's live tomorrow, Friday, July 14th. It starts. I am the co-host. Mr. Scott Devine is the host. We are going to have so much fun. If you haven't registered, please do. bass-space.com. www.bass-space.com. Get registered, or just hit SBL's website. I'm sure there's a banner. It'll take you there as well. It's going to be fun. 3 days of bass. There's going to be people teaching. I've got seminars. Scott does too. But then, of course, we've got guests. Are you kidding me? Absolutely, we've got guests. Jacob Umansky, Josh Paul. We've got Bakiti Kumalo, Roth Diaz, you kidding me? Who plays in Korn, and many others that I just can't bring up off the top of my head right now. So it's going to be a blast. If you're not registered, register right now, and I will see you at Bass 2023. I can't wait. But right now, a rare treat, the Bass 22 interview that I got to do with Mr. Billy Sheehan. It is a real honor to be speaking to you today. And for everybody, we are hanging out at Bass 2022. This is for our summit. And I am sitting here today with the legendary bassist, Billy Sheehan. Of course, you may know him from his incredible work with Talas, Mr. Big, Steve Vai, David Lee Roth, Niacin, the Winery Dogs, Sons of Apollo, and the list goes on and on. He is an uncanny combo of technician and part writer, which is rare for a guy with massive chops like Billy. He is an excellent communicator and educator who has built experience with thousands of shows and hundreds of records. And we are so lucky to get to hear from him at SBL. Welcome, Billy. Thank you, man, so much for being here.
You are far too kind, my friend. Thank you.
It's true, dude. It's so true.
10% of that, if I can. Very kind of you.
And a humble human to boot. Incredible.
Humility is easy because, especially nowadays with YouTube, we see musicians that are so unbelievable.
Yes.
How could you not feel like an insignificant little of nothingness?
And I mean, since you brought it up, I would love to actually get your opinion on this landscape that we're living in now of social media, and how you feel about it, and how you feel like your place is in it. Do you have thoughts about this?
Absolutely. I was an early adopter of almost all things digital when it came to recording. So therefore, when the internet came around, the concept that you're a couple clicks away from a billion people, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But so are a billion other people. So it's just a little crowded. But I've seen such great players on YouTube, Instagram, what have you. And just doing amazing things, doing the impossible.
Yeah.
My concern for them is, and this is a new world now, so it may not be a concern at all. They're doing it into the camera, on YouTube, whatever. My generation and the one before me and before that was we did everything on deck. It was on stage. It was live and it was real, and there was no second take or edit. And so that was a different kind of pressure. Now, a lot of old timers like myself will argue the point that that's a better kind of pressure. Not necessarily. It's a different world. It's a different kind of pressure. It's a different thing. So I have great faith in the future of music in general. Just knowing, seeing the type of talent there is out there, how just great they are. And then generally, you got to be a pretty good communicator to start with, where back in the day also, a lot of players could get up on stage and do the thing. You'd meet them afterwards and they wouldn't really know how to hold a conversation.
Right.
You know, so it's an interesting set of circumstances that is different. But the good thing is, for me now, I get to steal from all of them. Because when I was young, we never saw videos of Hendrix playing.
Right.
It wasn't until years later that YouTube come out, or you went to the theater to see a movie, and that when it was over, it was over. So now I can, it's quite inspiring. I'll always see some guy, here's a way to do the thing, and I'll like, I see what he's doing. And then that's the seed, and then I run with it. And that's what I always encourage other players to do when I was doing my clinics and what have you. Is I'll show you this thing here. I'm happy to take it. It's yours. Anything I do, take. It's okay. I've taken so much from so many. It would be crazy for me not to say that. But once you take it, travel with it, run with the ball, and do something with it. And it's amazing to see. I've seen a couple bass players, not to be self-aggrandizing, but I'm pretty sure I see some of the things that they've gotten possibly from myself.
Of course.
I also see them expand upon it massively and in such a great way. And same way for me, I learned from Paul Samuel Smith, Tim Bogert, Entwistle, Jack Bruce, a long list of people I took from all of them. And not only bass players, but pianists and sax players and all that too, guitarists as well. So, but I think the future looks bright for music and musicians. I'm an optimist.
Oh, I love that sentiment so much. And it seems like you have a finger on the pulse of what's going on, and you're actually actively checking out the new players. You see yourself in them. And then instead of feeling threatened or feeling like, oh no, wait a minute, they're stealing my thing, you're so excited to say, no, that's amazing. Take that, run with it. That's very encouraging.
Yeah, that's really how I feel, because I've done the same. Now, for me, I always give credit. Right, you know, if I go Paul Samuel Smith, you know, Jim Bogert, come on, you know, or John Entwistle, come on. So you know, I always try to give credit where credit is due, and there's a lot of credit due,
of course.
But if someone chooses not to, that's perfectly all right too. But I'm glad to see people just expanding. It's art, and art really needs no boundaries, in my humble opinion. And without those boundaries, you're unlimited. In the 2 years of the pandemic, I've been down here in my studio with my engineer Scott, and we've been recording. We've done over 300 tracks, about 6 albums.
Unreal.
Every style you can imagine, from real country to kind of country to electronic dance music to death metal to heavy metal to rock to fusion, prog, you name it. And it's been a great way for me to have these challenges come in that I must meet in order to play.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it's been a good 2 years, in spite of the fact that I haven't been able to perform live much.
So this is a side of your artistry that I feel like people don't maybe ask you, or at least I haven't seen a lot of people ask you about, but is this sideman. So are these tracks coming into you in terms of people asking you to play on their record? Is that what it is? Oh, yeah, just wow.
Out of nowhere, I get an email. Hey, I got the song. But I learned early on, I got to hear the song first before I say yes. Because sometimes I said yes and I got myself in trouble in 2 ways. Either it's way complicated, and I don't read. So I got to learn it, memorize it. I may make a few notes, but they're only notes that I would understand. You know, they don't really make a lot of sense. Just get an idea of arrangement more than I can't write down a line or anything. I got to remember it. So if it's a complicated piece, it's a lot more work. So that's a lot more hours for me. So I have to, maybe increase my fee a little bit and explain why. Or I get something that is just so not together. Even a righteous bass track is not going to help it. But interestingly enough, I'm not talking about me and my playing, but when you hear a piece and it's okay, we can do something with this, and a righteous bass line goes on there, wow, we got a piece of music now. My engineer Scott's giving me the.
Scott's feeling it, yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. What can we do? And really lock in with that drummer. Turn those drum tracks up. Find that bass drum. Make sure it's all right. Just lock in with him. Get an idea where it's going melodically, harmonically, musically. Move when you need to into that area. Go back to the drums. Weave this thing, and really, you can turn a track around completely, in my humble opinion, with a bass line done right. Not saying that I'm doing them right, but I mean just done right. And I think. The bass, as all of us bass players know, is kind of the like a catcher on a baseball team. He's got the thing out. He's back there. Every pitch he's got to deal with. It's hard work the whole game. It's a tough thing. We're back there. We're working hard. It's not necessarily a glory instrument, but there's some guys that have gotten a little glory from it. Whatever, but the bass line emphasizing its strength and importance in the body of a song. Pretty cool. Pretty amazing.
Very cool. And I'm so curious about this because obviously you have a sound that you're known for. You have a vibe that you're known for. And yet all of these people are reaching out to you in various styles to play. And as a side musician myself that does a bunch of session work from home, I send a lot of tracks. I'm so curious. Are you getting asked to do the Billy Sheehan thing on this stuff? And if so, what in your mind is that thing?
Well, I generally communicate back to them and said, how far do you want this? Do you want it all the way to one side or all the other? Because when I do a session for somebody, I am working for them and I want them to be pleased. I want it to be the way they want it. I'll do my shtick if you want. I'll do a subtle version of that. Yes. I'll remove that completely and do exactly what you want. I know I had the good fortune, of course, playing with Steve Vai years ago. And live, we were doing his song, For the Love of God, which basically is...
Yes.
And that's what the song is. That's how Steve wrote it. That's how the song's supposed to be. It's got to be that. And he's up there just changing lives when it's playing. The first couple times I played it with him live, I remember, even at rehearsals, it's because I'd never heard the song before. Okay, rehearsal, so we do it. You go, wait, what was that? Oh, it's a little passing tone. He goes, on the basis of passing, he goes, is that on the record? And I go, no. He goes, don't do that.
Wow, right.
And he wanted it that way. So, and God bless him, Steve is like a brother to me. I love him completely. And he's a genius. If he wants it that way, you got it that way. No problem. So I'm, it's important for players to learn to be sometimes totally selfless.
Yes.
And just let somebody else tell you how they want it to be. I did a country session for a friend, a young lady who's a friend of my wife's, Jennifer Lynn Simpson, quite an excellent singer and songwriter. And when I walked into the session, the engineers, they were all really, I saw them rolling their eyes. I go, oh, here we go. So I just said, I'm gonna do everything I can. So when I walk out of the session, they're all going like, hey, that was pretty good, So I just sat there and did exactly what they wanted, in time, in tune, right to the point, and they were happy with it. So to answer your question, I offer, and sometimes we even do like a second track.
Sure.
That's wilder, and I say, if you want to cut from one to the other and you have a chance to do that now in the age of Pro Tools. That's not a difficult thing. So we do that as well. We'll balance it out that way, or sometimes just go berserk, and they can deal with it as they may.
Well, I mean, I even remember way back to reading articles with you and interviews in Bass Player magazine, when I was coming up and really getting inspired about playing. And you always have had a penchant for playing for the song. I mean, even at Mr. Biggs, and that's when I came up, and seeing you in that zone, even when you guys were Makita drilling on the instruments, right? And the crazy shows and the sweat you always talked about, like writing the bass line for Green Tinted 60s Mind, for instance, like really trying to think about a bass line and what was going to serve the song. And it's incredible to me to hear you talk about this all these years later. You're doing sessions for people, during lockdown and still committed to delivering for the song. And I mean, do you feel like that is the crucial role of the bass player?
Yeah. Now we see, as with any instrument, there's multiple roles. A drummer, kick, hat, snare. That's all we need. Okay. But in the next song, we need some toms and we need to do some wild ass fills to make it, bring some excitement up, It's like that with every instrument. There's your basic thing you need to do to lay down what's necessary, because we got a vocalist, we got, lyrics, we've got all that stuff. But there's always room for a little bit of motion. And you get spice from many instruments. You'll see them overdub extra guitar parts or extra things, an extra horn section of some strings. So there's room for spice all the time. And fortunately for me, I grew up in a 3-piece band generally. Right. So when there was spice, I could add it on the bass. Yes. I used to play Schizoid Man by King Crimson. Yeah. There was a soprano sax trill right in the part. And just to give that extra little thing, because without that in it, it didn't sound like Schizoid Man to me. I needed that soprano sax trill in there. And a bunch of other examples. I apologize if people have heard them before. But same with so now it just saves us having to bring in a Hammond and a Leslie and all the other stuff. It's just a extra thing. So growing up in that 3-piece band, playing millions of compy tunes, and some pretty adventurous arrangements too. White Punks on Dope by the Tubes. There's a lot of vocals, a full chorus, and a lot of changes and synthesizer. Somehow with 3 guys we pulled it off, as far as I know. So having to do that was a big help to get ready to be in a situation where there's a song and there it is, and there's your basic bass part, and there's cool, and it's all root notes and it's locked with the drums. Cool. All right. Is there more? Could we do a little something more? Sure. How about if I just move around a little bit and do a bass line a la James Jamerson or Paul McCartney, 2 of the wildest bass players as far as all over the neck. Man, those guys were playing lead bass before anyone miscalculated that term. So there's always room for, not always, but there's often room for a little bit of spice, a little bit of color. And I've heard so many examples of it on wildly huge hit songs. What was it? You're So Vain by Carly Simon.
Carly Simon, yeah.
Before the song even starts, there's this little bass arpeggio, which was pretty cool. Yeah. And it's this huge, giant, top 40 monstrous hit. But there's room for a little thing in there, So
the difference, Billy, between how you're thinking about how to fit the little thing in there, and sometimes when other people try it and it doesn't work, is I perceive that you're never doing it out of ego. Like when you talk about the days in Talas, I presume, of playing Carry On Wayward Son and getting the Hammond thing, you're listening like a producer. You're wondering what's missing. You're not trying to get in the sick tapping licks that you've been working on. You're trying to play that Hammond Hammond part. You're trying to play the trill, the Schizoid Man. You're trying to play that sax part because you hear the song. You're not just trying to get the licks out. And that's, I think, why it works. Don't you think?
Well, thank you. But I think that's the gist of it. Jeff Berlin is a dear friend of mine. He lives here in Nashville now, too. We've done a couple of things together. But I remember he did a column in Guitar Player magazine many, many years ago about why do some guys get away with all these bass playing and other guys don't?
Yeah.
And he said, basically, it's because they can play it and they're in time. Two very important points. And that's why, again, another huge emphasis I talk about to players when I'm doing a clinic or seminar, that you see that big giant drum in the center of all the other ones, that bass drum. And amazingly, a lot of young players have no idea about it. They, I say every. That's where it all comes from. I learned from Joe Hesse, the first bass player I ever knew. He lived around the corner from me. Started me off playing bass. I would go to his house, and I had to sit outside on the driveway because I was a little pain in the ass kid. My older brother and sister could go in and listen to his band practice, but I had to sit outside. But I could even hear when I'm laying in bed because the bass travels. And one day I went over and he let me come in, and it wasn't the full band; it was just him and the drummer. And I said, Joe, where's the rest of the band? Why? He goes, no, you see, every time the drummer hits a bass drum, I got to play a note with it. So before I even owned a bass,
you knew.
Thank you. Thanks to my lucky stars, I learned the most important thing there was. And now, working with, of course, God rest his soul, Pat Torpey, it was just such a joy to work with him. Yeah. And we would watch each other like a hawk. And I would, we did do that ESP thing where he'd do a fill the first time he's ever done it in that song in that spot, and I would play exactly the same thing at the exact same time. We'd look at each other like, how does that even happen? But so myself and Mike Portnoy as well, it happens a lot. We just look at each other like, how did you know? Yeah, but how did you know? And these things fall together like that. That drummer ESP is a supremely important aspect of being able to, if you will, get away with moving around more. Because if you're locked in with the drums, and a lot of times, at the end of a chorus, and I'll play a bass line that does that follows along what he does, or even if it's just the same note, play that rhythm on the same note, on that root note, just to make sure you guys are locked together like a thing that would lock together very significantly. We ran out of analogies there. With Greg Bissonette and Edom Smile Band and Dennis Chambers changed my life because locking into him, it was a whole different feel. I played with straight up rock bands my whole life, and all of a sudden there's this, and everybody's kind of jumpy and ahead of the beat, or on it, or barely ahead. Where Dennis is, and wow, I had a whole different way of. It was just what a miracle to experience his playing as a bass player and play with him, and that was a huge step forward for me personally as a player. Which took to luck. It's because first couple times I knew I'm ahead. No more coffee.
And feeling how to sit back into his pocket,
watch him, and man, it was beautiful. Very cool.
You have mentioned all of these iconic drummers, and you've played with some of the greatest drummers in the world. Do you feel like there is a through line, all those drummers, where you can identify a certain trait where when you hear a great drummer, you go, oh, that's that thing. And what is that to you?
I wish I knew, but when I go to see a band, I watch the drummer first. And if the drummer's working, then I see who else is on stage. And it's really important to me because as a bass player, it's bass and drums. So I'm very lucky now living here in Nashville. Ray Lugier also lives here. He's a drummer for Korn, and he's a dear friend. And we work together a lot with the same engineer, Scott, we've got a little production team together. We've done a bunch of records together. Watching Ray play, he's just a grand master of a giant kit. It doesn't sound like a giant kit. It sounds just like this concentrated, amazing groove and time and, functional moves as a drummer that are moving the song along. So it's that's a great advantage of getting into drums and drumming. I would collect as many drum solos on my iTunes, tons of Billy Cobham. I saw Billy Cobham with Dreams before Mahavishnu Orchestra with the Breck Brothers and the horn for $1.50 at the University of Buffalo.
Amazing.
60 something. And that was the first time I saw the polished cymbals that were like super shiny polished. And he blew my mind. And did a track with Vinny Colaiuta, myself, Doug Pinnick on vocals, Yngwie on guitar, and Vinny on drums to do Van Halen, Light Up the Skies. And so I'm lucky to have played with some great drummers. And I had all of them leave a mark on me as far as understanding what they do and how great they are at it, and what, how important it is for me to this thing in the drums are where it's at, that rhythm section. I always tell people, we go to sound check, what do they check first? The drums.
Absolutely.
What's next? The bass. And I know the Mr. Big sound checks, Pat and I would just go through a whole song, just bass and drums.
Yeah.
And I think it was Rock and Roll Over, and we just lock into that thing. And after one time, people goes, "Hey, tell Paul and Eric we got this. Just do that tonight." Of course, respect the incredible Paul Gilbert.
Of course, yes.
Martin. But it's just as a joke, because but we wanted to make it so that foundation is so solid that when the guitarist Paul and the singer Eric are up there, they feel like 18 inches of structural concrete underneath them.
Yes.
Feel like it's together, solid. So before a tour, I would sit down with the drummer. Let's do the whole set 2 or 3 times a day. Take a break, come back and do it 2 or 3 more times. And so it's second nature just to live and breathe, and that set and everything the drummer does, and watch every move he makes, get that so together. When it comes time for the tour, it's rock solid.
Oh, I love that you're working through the set with just the drummer a few times, take a break, come back and do it again.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Because it's going the whole band there, but it's a different thing.
Yes.
Practicing, there's an art to practicing individually and as a band as well. So sitting down with just the guitar and vocals, you're going to be able to hear all the notes you're singing, everything like that. Just the guitar and bass, you hear everything that needs to work. But bass and drums, that's that foundation. Yeah. Just to work just with the drummer, go through the whole set, and it's going to be just so much more powerful, I think. And again, that's why I like to emphasize to people that the importance of being smart about practicing, and practicing as an art can really open up a lot of doors. I sit down here, I get up in the morning, feed the cat, and sit down for hours and work on mechanics of my hand, different ways of approaching time within, everybody does like so let's do it in 5s. Let's do it in 7s. Let's do it in 3s. And now I do it backwards. And now we do it a completely different set of positions and do that frontwards, backwards, 3, 5, 7, just to get your hands used to doing any movement that you may need them to do at a very opportune time. Then when you do, your hands are never holding you back.
Yeah.
Nor are your ears, because you know what all that sounds like. You get that feel for 5, a feel for 7, not herky-jerky 7 or discombobulated 5, but a smooth, easy, nice 7 that won't clear out the dance floor. And the same with the 5. It does have a pulse, just to get used to things like that. So smart practicing alone, but then our subject, of course, prior to that was the bass and drums. Smart practicing with bass and drums, I think, is really an important thing.
Oh, well, and so we've talked so much about rhythm, and I would also love, you are so identifiable, not only by the notes that you play, and we're talking, 3-finger technique and all the things that you do, and the bends and the taps, and you're not only identified by that and killer bass playing, part writing, but also by a sound. You have this sound, and I would love, I know you've talked about it a lot, but I would love for you to just take us through a bit of this evolution of your sound and how you feel it's important to you from P bass to chainsaw through chocolate pudding, right? Like how, right? Like this sound is so identifiable. You have a rock and roll bass sound that when I hear 3 notes, 2 notes, maybe 1, I go, Billy Sheehan. And I wonder what that means to you, and if you could talk a bit about its evolution.
Good question. Yeah, I started out with a straight up P bass. It's actually on the wall right there.
Is it the wife?
That's the wife.
Yeah.
It's her sister. That's the Yamaha 30-year anniversary version of her.
Oh, so cool.
When I first started out, I got my bass from Art Kubera Music at 910 Fillmore at Sycamore, Buffalo, New York.
Yes.
Long gone, but not forgotten. And he didn't have the P bass in yet, so he gave me a Gibson EVO, which had that big, fat, giant pickup on it. And I was a huge Yardbirds fan to start with, and Paul Samuel Smith. So that tone of that low pickup there, I loved how deep and low. Paul McCartney also would often use that low pickup on his Hofner.
Yeah.
Or maybe on his Rickenbacker. I'm not as familiar with his gear as some people are. It just get that super deep roll, just a sine wave of notes. It was so great. So my bass came in, I sent that back and I got the P bass, and man, it was great. I could hear every note I'm playing. So cool, but I kind of missed the low one too. But I noticed there's this big space here. So I'm going to chisel out literally and chisel on that bass and ordered an EBO pickup from Gibson, stuck it in there, didn't know how to wire it. So I wired 2 outputs because I didn't know how to combine the 2 of them together. And ran it. At the time I had a Fender Super Bassman amp. So I ran the bass into the one channel and the EBO into one, the P bass into another. So that started things for me in that I always had that low end there. So if I wanted to fool around with some distortion or trebly thing here, get harmonics and such, that low end doesn't go away. Where it does if you don't have that dual output. So that parallel dual output thing, not stereo, some people mistake it with stereo. It's a dual output thing. Was not my idea, even though I didn't know it at the time, and just did it out of ignorance, really, quite lucky ignorance, I guess you could call it. But Rickenbacker Rico sound, 2 outputs from the bass, 2 pickups. All the early Alembic basses, all the handmade, they all had dual outputs, a 4-pin cannon connector, split at your rack or amp to go into 2 amps or 2 channels, whatever else. I read, I don't know if this is true or not, John Paul Jones split his P bass pickups to go to 2 different amps. I saw a jazz bass of Mel Shacker from Grand Funk with the EBO pickup on there too. So later, this all years later. So all it did was make me think, well, maybe I wasn't completely out of my mind at the time when I did it.
Yeah, right.
So now the idea with the, basically there's 3 tones. The low, I could turn that on the EBO. It had a high cut switch, so we put that there. So a little button on the EBO. So turn that bass all the way down. Not much. So if I hit a harmonics, can't even really hear them.
Right.
They're there, but it's super deep low end.
Yes.
Then the P bass. Could I trouble you to step on that button again for me? I got my distortion on off. It was hilarious. The Edelman Smile Tour. Steve, was suddenly thrust into arena, and so he had this giant pedal board with all these. It was a Bob Bradshaw rig with about 40 switches on it. The problem was if they lost power, it would dump all of its memory. You'd have to reprogram the whole thing all over again.
Oh my
so
God.
In every sound check, sure enough, power's up, and his crew guy, Elwood, who eventually went on to work with ZZ Top for years, and now I think he's even playing bass for since the sad passing of Dusty Hill. I would see Elwood over there with his Mountain Dew, the highest caffeine soft drink, and with piles of empty cans of Mountain Dew just to try and get it all together. And then we'd say, "Hey, guys over here," and I had one switch, distortion on, distortion off. That's what we had. So,
attaboy.
So he was jealous for that. But basically,
it's great.
Clean low end, or clean regular P bass tone. Not a lot of heavy low end, but not harmonics all there. Now when I hit the distortion, All that is there, but the clean is still there underneath it. And then when I turn the low on, so all this stuff is there, and then it was also came in very handy again in the 3-piece band, because we had that distortion sound almost like a rhythm guitar player.
Yes.
So as the guitar player is soloing, he's got something underneath him that's almost a little more melodic and chordal because of the distortion and the extra notes in it than just a straight up root note. Now, some guitarists want that straight up root note, so I'll turn that distortion off if that's what you want. But to someone else, it's just more underneath them. I remember my guitar player back in the day saying to me, "Yeah, I went out and jammed with the bass and drums the other night with some other band. Man, when I stopped playing chords and went to a solo, there was a hole you could drive a truck through." It was, sometimes I like that hole. Sometimes it's kind of cool. So it's art. And anything's legal. But having that underneath them, generally, they most guitarists feel, especially in a 3-piece situation, like there's a little bit more underneath them, spells out the chords, so they're soloing, the notation of the soloing falls in together a little bit better. So that's kind of the evolution of it. And initially it came with the 1 amp, 2 channels. Then I got an SVT, used 2 channels. Then I got 2 channels, 1 each. Then I had 3 SVTs. Then SVTs were really difficult to maintain and expensive with all the tube stuff, and the speakers would blow a lot. So I went to All Pro Audio, had some custom preamps made. My somewhat famous Pierce preamp now is modeled. It's modeled in the Helix software, my actual Pierce. So it's in there, and I've used that for a lot of recording too. Right now I'm actually using the analog Pierce, but we go back and forth between them. And split signal. Also, at one point, harmonizer. So I have my 2 high-end cabinets with distortion and clean coming out, and run one input into the harmonizer, then to the power amp. So it had that wavering cascade. So I just got the UAD Apollo 910 harmonizer plug-in, and it's glorious. So we've been using that lately. It sounds like the old Talas kind of tune, because a lot of guys go back and listen, like sink your teeth into that or some of the Talas live stuff, and there's this shimmer on everything, and that's what it was. So I found a way to bring that back. Oh,
so cool. The secrets are coming out today, man.
I'm an open book, though. Anything you want to know.
It's so great. I mean, that just speaks to your confidence. It's so awesome. I remember reading a Bass Player magazine and seeing a full page diagram. I wonder if you remember this.
I do.
Of your rig for a particular record. I wonder if it was Bump Ahead or
it was Bump Ahead, yeah.
Yes, and on that record, I remember seeing amp after speaker cabinet after speaker cabinet, mics, and all of these things. And I just thought to myself, holy moly. And I wonder if you feel like from that seemed to be sort of the pinnacle of like the most, right? Down to then this modeling technology that we have now. Is there anything about that era that you miss, or is it all feel excellent in the modeling? Like, how do you go between those in your mind?
Well, I was an early adopter of all things digital, as I said earlier. I love it. There's always something going wrong. There's this constant, and some people love that. Some people want to be in there like it's a car, or every time you drive, something happens. But they love getting in there and fixing it and modifying it. And that's cool. It's a whole world. And there was a bunch of rack groups on Facebook. Then I've posted a couple of my racks on there a few times here and there. It's great stuff. But basically, we have all that now in software.
Yes.
Just like the movie business or almost any other photography, whatever you do, we have digital recreations of such. In the studio now, I'm still using a lot of analog stuff, but I also use the Helix to a great degree. My clean tone goes through an Avalon all-tube, a compressor preamp, the 737P.
Yeah.
So I always have that, this pickup through that, exactly right, clean as can be, flat, That's on a track separately. So if you want more of that, you can have it. At front of house, similar thing. If you want cleaner, you can just pull the distortion down. That gives the mixer a little bit more option than me. I'm hearing what I want to hear, but if he doesn't want to hear too much, he can change it. But yeah, I love it. And that was probably the ultimate amount of stuff. And then soon after that, I went back and Ampeg came alive again. And I started using the Ampeg stuff again. And it was great because the 4 Pro had a built-in crossover, built-in compressor. So it saved me a lot of gear and rack space. So it got a little smaller, a little tighter, a little tighter, a little tighter. And now, next time out, whenever that may be, soon I hope, I'm going to try the Class D power amps.
Oh, cool.
And I know they don't do low end like a normal or a traditional amp, but get 2 then. Because they're so light, about 4 pounds. So there's got to be a way to do it. So I've never been much of a really kind of a stick to it purist. I like things the way they work for me more than following tradition. So at this point, and the whole point of all this rigmarole with the different pickups and like that, a lot of it had to do with just to be able to hear the note.
Yes, right.
If I can hear the note, I know what to play. And that's the whole point of everything. So I hear guys out there sometimes, a lot of guys do a big smiley curve on their EQ. Because when you're quiet, it sounds exactly right.
Yeah, right.
When you turn that up, you hear a rumble and a click, and I can't hear the note. So people used to ridicule me because my curve was a frown curve. Why should that? Was a frown curve.
Yeah.
But when you turn it up, the Fletcher-Munson curve makes it do that. And suddenly you can hear the notes, what's in there. There's not too much high, not too much low. So the whole point of it always is to hear the notes. So if it's a digital thing or an analog thing and I can hear what I'm playing and I can get into that moment, me and the drummer, the audience, that thing that happens, I don't care how it's getting reproduced. As long as we got that rolling, I can hear the notes and it's responding. And it's quite amazing digital situation we have now. In about 5 years,
I know
it's going to be out of control. So
I can't even imagine how fast it's moving now. I agree. I think within 5 years, I have some old classic Ampeg amps that I used to mic up all the time, and now there's some stuff that has come out. I haven't turned them on in years.
I was in a discussion with a couple of famous producers and a few other guys, and everybody said, we haven't mic'd up an amp in about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, so, right. I believe it. And there's something cool about the old thing, right? There's something very cool aesthetically about it and how it feels and, air moving in a room. But man, on recordings, boy, it seems I love that you're embracing the new. I think that's just very cool.
Yeah, I think it's important. But you're right. There is a thing. You got a Fender Twin and take it to a gig with your Strat or a Fender Bassman with your P-Bass or Jazz Bass. It's a beautiful thing. That's incredible.
It's cool.
And I think it's a good idea to always go back to that stuff once in a while just to make you know where ground zero is. Okay, this is how it was. Because sometimes you can start to skew off and it's not making sense to anybody but you. So ground yourself with that thing. And I think you can reorient yourself to how it should be properly.
Yeah. I would love it, Billy, if you wouldn't mind talking a bit too about your 3-finger technique. You have such a signature thing. And I was watching that video that you did, all those years ago where you're with that guy that has also the big blonde head of hair. Yeah, man. Oh, it's such a wild interview.
Wolf Marshall, I think. Yeah, he's one of them. I think so. He's different hair now, so rest assured.
You play, on that, you go, and it felt like I had my YouTube player on 2X and I didn't. And so I would just love, I'm going to stop talking. I would love to let you talk about that a little bit and demonstrate if you would gift us with that.
Sure thing. Could I try to hit that switch again for me? Let's turn the distortion off. It'll be a little clearer. Basically, now, I had a guy, an unknown person to me, write to me on Instagram. Unknown to me, someone took one of my old instructional videos and posted it on LinkedIn. and said, "It's the Billy Sheehan course. Just sign up here." And I didn't know who it was. It had nothing to do with it. It's impossible to stop that stuff. But this guy wrote to me, kind of angry. "You're teaching the wrong technique. This is wrong. I'm a stand-up player. You're ruining people's lives." And it pretty much was a death threat. But then I said, "Bro, calm down." And then I remember had been checking out Neil Henning Orsted Pedersen.
Yes.
The bass player, you got to know this guy's name. He does a stand-up, plays it like it's a little ukulele, and he's three fingers. And it's ring, middle, index is the sequence. Now, I didn't get it from him. I wish I would have. I'd probably be a better player if I would have gotten it from him. But he was just a grandmaster at bass. Probably one of the greatest players to ever live, period. And check him out. Rick Beato does a great piece talking about him and how amazing he is. And him playing with Joe Pass, impossible. And they're just killing it. So because I also did that means that it probably has some grounding in common sense. Why would you go not that way? Because that way is not natural. You're sitting around... That's a natural way your fingers fall.
You're so right.
That's normal. Now it's 3, so it's going to sound like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So try to put the emphasis on a different finger each time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Get that quadruplet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 feel. Now that takes a little doing. It also takes some calluses. An unsung component of finger players is that the texture of your skin. If it's soft, and my pinky is usually soft because I don't use it as much, it catches.
Yes.
So you'll hear it'll be a little louder because it's catching and dragging and pulling harder. So getting the calluses even. So sometimes I'll just sit there and just hit as hard as I can on a brand new string. It's going to tear my fingers up, and I'm going to get calluses. And I get the pinky in there too. He doesn't get off easy. And just get that solid callus on there. And so now each finger is pretty much the same in texture. So when it hits that string, another secret part of it is that I'm using this pickup as a ramp that prevents the finger from going too far, which would catch, or missing it, or hitting it not hard enough. So my finger hits here, the string gets in the way, I slide across. Just like a stand-up player plays over the neck. Same exact thing. They're actually touching that fingerboard. Right. And it's acting as a ramp. And then, like I said before about being smart about practicing, I decided, well, I better start to work on 4. It's there. So, and I'll do things like a burst of. So that triplet burst happens on 3 different fingers each time. First time it happens on these 3, the next one, that's a tough one. And then the next one, 1, 2, 3. So that burst of 3. So now I'm not warmed up, so it's not smooth. But to bring in all 4 fingers, if I ever need them, that's a great exercise to do that. Similarly, with the 3 fingers, I'll do groups of 4. A common. Missed a few. I'm not warmed up. I do it in my clinics. I start talking so much, I got to play, and I'm not warmed up anymore. Anyway, the 3-finger technique is simple. Anybody can do it. There's a bunch of videos that show what I do. When I do my master classes or clinics, everything I have is I give away. If you want to know it,
Yeah.
I'll be happy to show you. Or if any of you people watching want to get in touch with me and have me explain any of this further, it's me that answers all my social media. It's a time killer. It's a full-time
Incredible.
job. But I do love it, and I've met some amazing people and done some just people. I think we lose this message a lot that people overall are awesome and great generally. We get a few bad apples to make it look like the whole world is awful, but people are great. That another great thing about social media, I'm in touch with so many great players, so many wonderful people and fans and stuff. So it's a good thing. So the three things you can that sequence never breaks. It's always and anything I do, anyone can do if you spend enough time at it. I'm thoroughly believe that.
Yes.
So sometimes when you see a bass player do something, and that was probably pretty simple to a lot of players, what I just played there. But some guys, it might go past them and make them concerned a little bit about their own playing. Anybody can do that. Just chip away. It's in there. Just take it slow.
Yep.
Take it slow. Take it slow.
Right.
I sit on my little couch there and come up with licks and ideas and stuff like that. When I first do them, I am useless. I can't do it at all. And I'm fumbling and fudging and reeking and awful and terrible. But I keep at it. Oh, I'm halfway there. And then eventually, or like I said, we're doing so many recordings. Somebody will send me, especially guitar players, oh, here, double this. I go, well, hold on a second. I got to pull it apart and figure it out. As a matter of fact, I did, I can't play it yet. I got to find out if I get permission. But there is this wonderful singer in Japan, Mari Hamada. And she's kind of a prog singer, comes out with a beautiful gown, and there's this great band behind her, great voice. And she sent me a piece that was the most difficult piece of music I ever recorded in my life. Really? And I've got it now. And they sent originally the MIDI bass on one channel. Yeah. And so I could listen to just the MIDI bass and learn it. So I put the audio of the MIDI bass on my amazing slow downer at about 20% to try to figure, and we worked, and Scott, my engineer's laughing over there because he was with me the whole time. We got it. In the end, we got it. We did it. But, oh, God, it was so tough. So I did a mix where it's just the MIDI bass on one side and me on the other, man versus machine. So I gotta contact her and see. I'm not sure if that record came out or not yet, so I don't want to violate her deal there, though. But I got to get it and put it out. And I had to do it on a 6-string bass because it was way too wide, and everything was all super deep, low B string. All these impossible things. When I heard it, I thought, I don't know, man. I should say it's a different song you want me to play on, but we went at it. So anything is within reach. Give it enough time. Take it slow, and people will. I often get a message. Well, how do I play fast? I go, well, why do you want to play fast? Well, I just want to. I go, well, I learned how to play bass first and learn some songs, and then I would worry about the fast. But of course, they don't take my advice. They still want to learn how to play fast. I go, well, how do you learn how to run fast? You start slow, put some ankle weights on, stretch out. You figure out what you do. It's like anything else. Yes, it's easier for someone to figure out. So, but just one of the key elements of being able to play something snappy or quick is that every note is sounding and it's in time and it's righteous. I have a metronome right next to me when I practice. An interesting thing happens when I put I'll be playing along and keeping time. I'm okay. It's in. I always keep a foot going when I'm playing live. Put the metronome on. I'm in, but it's harder to play it. And it actually takes more physical strength. I think, aha. That's telling me something, that there's some muscles at work when I'm not listening to the metronome. Yes. That when I'm not listening to it, they're not at work. When I'm listening to it, they are, because I'm getting tired out easier. So, so I might be drifting or jumping ahead, or just to keep my mind split on that time and what I'm doing, makes me push harder. So another component again of practice, the art of practicing. There's all these component things that I go through
absolutely
every morning, mercilessly.
And it's so incredible to hear how much you're still working at it. I think, sometimes pros at big, high levels of playing, maybe they say things like, I'm not really practicing anymore, or they're not going to talk about the session that they had to use their amazing slow downer. But just know that when you talk about those things, for us mere mortals, it gives us hope, Mr. Billy Sheehan.
Have hope. And I know, and I've done, rehearsals in rooms with some amazing players, and we all
sure.
Everybody goes through
of
that.
Course. Yes.
That doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? So it happens to everybody. Yeah, you get the impression when you see somebody on a video or see them live, when they're at their peak, they've been playing, the 10 shows into a tour, their hands are in great shape. The monitors are perfect. Everything is right. They pull it off. Yeah.
Right.
The first couple shows may not have been that good. Certainly the first couple rehearsals probably weren't, but maybe they are. There's players that are far in advance of what I do that probably can go up and just make it happen without much effort beforehand. I'm not one of those guys. It takes a lot of work.
Well, you have doubled down on a thing that is so signature, and that's why we love you, is that you have doubled down on this thing that makes you, and you're so singular in how you sound and how you approach the instrument. And it's just so fun to speak to you. I would love to ask you, you've been so generous with your time. I would love to ask you, one more thing. I'm asking everybody that we interview here, for Bass 2022, which is, if Billy now could tell a young Billy a word of advice just starting out, what would you say to your younger self? What word of advice would you like to pass on to you in your trajectory as you're starting out in music?
Write your ass off. Keep writing. Don't stop writing. Write a horrible song, hate it all you want, and then write another one, and then write another one and another one. Then go back to those horrible songs and pick a few things out of them that might work and put them in new songs, and keep writing and writing and writing, and complete the song. Finish it. Don't leave little pieces laying around. I got hundreds of thousands of pieces to think I should have just kept going and doing.
Yes.
Fortunately, I got to a spot where I did write a lot, but it happened. If it would have happened earlier, it would have been better for me. Just overall career-wise, I would have had more songs to pick from, more songs on more records. And writing is you're creating the framework for everything else we do. All your playing, all the technique, all this nonsense would be nowhere without songs that somebody wrote. And that's the element there. You can practice your bass line and your locking with the drummer and your scales and all kinds of things. And they're of no value until they're put into a piece of music that someone that's not a musician is going to turn on and go, oh, I like that. Are they playing in town? Let's go to the show. That is really what it's all about. So to write, I would have written a lot more. I did write a lot eventually, but I would have just kept going and got a writing routine and got up. And I know a lot of great songwriters, and they just got a routine, and they get up every day and they sit there with that blank piece of paper and think of something. Let's do something.
Yes.
Okay, that was awful. Okay, let's do another one. That one was awful too. But day 28, we got one.
Hey, right.
Keep going. And again, the art of practice, just to hit it hard. I always did, but as you get older, you get smarter sometimes. And now my practice is more focused. It's got purpose. I see results. I'm doing a thing and I can't do it, and I analyze it and figure it out and work at it. All of a sudden, there it is. I got it.
Incredible.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's in time. It's righteous. So between the writing and the righteous practicing, I would have, though I did eventually do those things, and just because common sense tells you that they're supremely important. But
yes.
I wish somebody would have, sat me down and put their fist against my chest, start writing and keep writing.
Yes.
Practice smarter, goddammit, and keep going. Get out of here now. I wish that would have happened.
Well, thank you for passing that along to all of us. And I mean, for everybody watching, this has been so amazing. What a treat to get to talk to you. Billy, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have anything right now that you'd like to promote, that you're excited about, maybe a website, a place that we can find you, a place that you want to direct people, please let us know how best to support you.
Absolutely. On Facebook, there's a blue check mark verified. That's me. Instagram, blue check mark verified. Twitter as well. I have a personal Facebook page too that you can't verify. So there are two. That's me, and that's only me. Recently, I had a girl answering that she was my personal assistant. To get in, there ain't no personal assistant. That's all.
It's you.
Scammers.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's me. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'll be happy to answer any further questions. I do a live one-on-one masterclass at Lane Music here in Brentwood. And the new Talas record is, we just released the second single, Crystal Clear. Very pleased with it, and great honor of our singer who passed away right after our recording, Phil Narrow. He sang an amazing performance on that. New Winery Dogs is getting mixed right now. And we even did a little niacin show, me, Dennis Chambers, and John Novello, for a special event a couple months back. So we're thinking about doing some shows again, too. So, but again, anyone wants to get in touch with me, please don't hesitate. I'm always here to help. And I thank you. And really, I got to give my affection for Scott's Bass Lessons, the channel. It's always great. I always watch it. I always learn a little from it myself. And it's just a great community of awesome players that supporting each other. And that's the most important thing in the world. So I wish everyone watching today nothing but the best. And thank you for all your kind words.
Oh, Billy, you're the greatest, man. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.